Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Faith Podcast. I'm Luke Timmons. I'm joined today by Cody Butler. Cody is a whitetail hunting nut, I think is probably a good word for it.
That would fit me pretty well.
Yeah. So I first off, I just want to thank you for hopping on. I know you're a super busy guy, and you just got done doing some filming last week. Is that right?
Yeah, I was actually, I haven't done any freelance work for several years, and I started doing some stuff with Hunt Stand here
Nice.
the last couple years, and they do their Hunt Stand original films. And
Okay.
Will Cooper from Hunt Stand came out and hunted Kansas with me last year, and we based a film around a 7-year-old buck that I had him kill. Ended up killing him opening day over a water hole I put in. Really
Nice.
cool hunt, but we became really good friends through that, and he invited me to come out and be a second shooter in Missouri, and we were trying to tell a story. A really good friend of his, that's a veteran that was wounded in the line of duty, and we were trying to get him a deer, but man, hot weather and just terrible conditions out there. We were struggling, so we're hoping to maybe go back, or maybe even have him come out here and hunt Nebraska with me late season. So we'll see what happens there.
Nice. That'd be sweet. So, and that's kind of the cool part about hunting, and like a lot of people know, is just how all of a sudden one hunt can completely change, and you become friends with, lifetime friends with somebody just based off that one kind of hunt.
Absolutely. I'd say some of my closest friends that I can really trust have been, we've connected through something like that. So yeah.
For sure. And just so going off of that, how did you kind of get into hunting originally?
Gosh, my dad and both my grandparents hunted. So I mean, starting at the second I could sit on my dad's lap that he could take me. I mean, he was taking me for sure.
Nice.
I've got so many awesome memories. I remember when I was I think the one thing that really sparked it for me, I can't remember how old I would have been. It was before I shot my first deer when I was 6 years old, I think, or 7. So it would have been before that, but we had these little homemade ladder stands, and then, back then too, everybody made stands out of 2x4s, and stuff up in the tree.
Good old days.
Yeah. So I was sitting in this like little homemade 10-foot ladder stand, and in this little island of trees, and then like, oh gosh, I don't know, 15, 20 yards away, my dad was up in a 2x4 stand, and I was just watching. We both couldn't fit in his stand basically. And this big old buck comes down during the rut, first week in November, and come from behind my dad, grunting like crazy, and stops like 10 yards in front of my dad, and he shoots him with a bow, and the arrow like sticks in the ground right below my stand, and he runs off, and I was like, this is awesome.
I'm hooked.
That's a memory I remember, being a kid that just really sticks in my mind, I was addicted, I think, after that, for sure.
Absolutely. So was it bow hunting kind of right off the jump then for you?
Yeah, for sure. My dad actually grew up shooting. He shot some tournament archery and stuff, like not professionally really, but he shot for Hoyt for a while back in the 80s, and
oh wow,
just some different things like that. He toyed around with traditional archery for a while when I was younger too, and killed a few good deer that way. And then my grandpa, who's passed away now, he was into traditional archery and stuff. And so,
nice.
Yeah, it was a really cool upbringing. My other grandpa, my dad's dad, was more into the firearm side of hunting. So I really got a good mix of everything growing up. So it was pretty cool to see.
Can't beat that. Now, do you have kids of your own now too?
Yes, I've got 2 kids. Reese, she's 5 years old, and Wyatt, who's 2 years old. So
okay, nice. Yeah, I'm same boat. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old. So
yeah, pretty much right. Same area.
busy.
It's interesting.
They like getting out with you?
What's that?
Do they like getting out hunting with you much?
They do, and Wyatt's probably a little too young yet to quite understand, but I feel like Reese is kind of getting to the point where she asks a lot of questions and wants to go more. She's in kindergarten this year, so it's tough to get out unless she's on the weekends, but she's always wishing me luck when I go out the door, and excited to see if I saw anything or got anything when I get back. So
love it. So what about specifically about bow hunting? I know you've obviously, like you said, kind of were just born into it. What is it that sets it apart for you above kind of any other style of hunting, whether it's, firearms or whatever?
I would say, if this is the right word, it's just a little more intimate. You're getting closer to
Yeah.
the animals. You've got to be a little better hunter, I think.
Hmm.
To be honest, I think you've got to have some pretty good woodsmanship. Um, and I don't know, it's just something about being that close to the animal and just tricking him, I guess, on his turf. I think is that chess game. I think is really what gets me. Not to say, depending on what part of the country you're in, gun hunting it can be difficult too.
Oh,
But
sure.
you can definitely reach out. I mean, I know, when I was strictly bow hunting more, there's several times I didn't get a deer that I could have gotten with a gun. So I think that challenge, I've always been a guy who likes competition and likes a
Hmm.
challenge. So I think that part of it is really what appeals to me.
Absolutely. So just kind of going off of that, are you more of a tree stand guy, or are you kind of a mix of tree stand, spot and stock?
Tree stand and blinds are definitely more. We
Yep.
don't have a lot of spot and stock whitetail opportunities here now. In
Right.
Nebraska, where I'm at, you got to western Nebraska, we've got
Hmm.
some pretty decent mule deer hunting out there. That's spot and stock. I've done that a couple times. I actually
Yep.
went out there. One of my main companies that I work for is Henry Repeating Arms.
Okay.
So gosh, it's been 2 years ago, I think now. I got a tag in a mule deer management unit that's pretty hard to get a gun tag, and went out there and shot a really nice one with a Henry lever action. So that was pretty cool.
That's sweet. So what, I mean, and this is kind of going into, where we're sitting here for, mid to late October. What is your kind of strategy once, we move? Because what's opener for Nebraska?
September 1st now in Nebraska, and I think
Okay.
this year in Kansas it was like the 15th or 16th. It's usually somewhere, it changes every
Right in the
year.
middle.
Yeah, it's usually right there in the middle. Sometimes it's a little later. I believe last year
Hmm.
was the earliest it was been. It was like on the 11th or 12th last year. It was pretty early for Kansas. So I don't know really
Yeah.
what they go off of because it changes every single year. I don't know. It probably goes off a day of the week. Kansas usually starts like on a Wednesday, which is kind of weird. So I
Okay.
don't know if it's like the second Wednesday or like third, however it falls. It's just
Hmm.
kind of weird that way. But
Yeah, that's kind of like Minnesota Gun this year is later. It's not till November 9th. So it's like all of us bow hunters are just licking our chops. We're like, wait, we get the whole first week of November with, just the bow
yeah,
guys in the woods.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And up that
For
way, you guys got a lot of orange in the woods, from what I've heard.
lot of
So
orange.
yeah,
Yep. 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 So it's definitely, not that you can't get her done after gun opener, but they definitely are a lot more leery as
you know
far
the
as
game a little
pressure,
more.
pressure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They're like, wait a second, something's off now. There's a bunch of guys in orange running through these woods
yeah, for sure.
for sure. But so going off of that, so both moving switching from early season to kind of this mid, like I said, mid season, late October. What strategies are you kind of starting and changing from early season?
I've actually kind of over the last, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years, I've really started to like mid to late October even more than
Hmm.
the rut as far as killing specific bucks. Um, Seems like every year, for the last several years, I really kind of dedicate myself to a target deer that I go after. And it seems like, kind of starting about right now, going to the end of the month, especially if we can get a really good cold front. That just
Yeah.
seems to be one of the best times of year to get a target deer killed. I feel like obviously the rut's great. You can
Hmm.
set yourself up in funnels or specific areas and get a deer, but I found a lot of times it's hard to kill a specific buck sometimes during the rut, especially on the small farms that I hunt, because they might be on the neighbors chasing a doe, or they might be here locked down or there, and it seems like they're moving a lot more. But I really like to hone in on scrape lines this time of year. With the advancements of trail cameras, I
Hmm.
feel like I don't want to say easy, but it's definitely helped kind of narrow down where specific deer are, maybe what scrape lines they're using, stuff like
Hmm.
that. And we've been extremely dry out here the last 3 years, so water has been a huge key. I kind of mentioned there, my buddy Will from Hunt Stand came out. He killed a deer opening day of Kansas last year. We were pretty dry on a man-made water hole that I put in, a big 7-year-old deer. So last year, I killed a deer coming to water. He came in, went to a scrape, and then went to water. So I think really you got to kind of just assess what the weather's like that year. For you, obviously, food sources are big. We do a lot of food plots and stuff. Green fields seem to be a really good thing this time of year, like your
Hmm.
radishes, your rye, your clovers, alfalfa, stuff like that. So you just kind of really got to assess what the weather's like, really look for cold fronts, and maybe get yourself on a green field or an active scrape line for sure.
That's a wealth of information there and a wealth of knowledge for anyone that's listening here. So going off of that, because we've had a super dry summer, we had a really wet early summer, and now it's been absolutely just dry,
Yeah.
and we're finally starting to hit those cold fronts. So when you're talking food source, you're talking the greens. Do you guys have much for like acorns down there or anything?
Um, we do. I have one farm that's pretty loaded with
Mm-hmm.
oats. And for whatever reason, we are probably the driest this year that I've seen in my lifetime. Like
Really?
it's terrible. Most of our, what I call farm ponds and stuff like that are either almost dry or completely dry. Like I took a drive the other day down to some of our Kansas farms, and I probably passed 10 or 12 ponds on dirt roads and the highway, and pretty much every single one of them was dry.
Mm.
It's bad, but for whatever reason, the acorn crop this year was just insanely good. And on that 80-acre farm, I've noticed it's been a little difficult to pinpoint a deer on that property because there is so many oak trees, and they can
Yeah.
pretty well just go wherever they want. There's really no way to narrow one down there right now. And there's a couple decent bucks, mature bucks on that farm this year, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing I've really been targeting yet. So it can make it difficult. Acorns can make it difficult,
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like, especially if you've got a lot of them. It can definitely be tough to pinpoint them down. Now, if you've got like one or two specific trees, then I feel like it's a little
There you
easier to
go.
pinpoint them down. I know a few guys that have done that.
Yep.
So I know a guy out in North Carolina that kind of hunts the mountains there, and he has on his place just a couple random wild apple trees that he's killed some really good bucks off of in the past, back in deep timber.
Yep.
So
Interesting. Yeah, we were out pheasant hunting. This pheasant just opened here in Minnesota, so we were out pheasant hunting, and we were, as I'm walking, I'm pinging spots on my phone for deer on some public
yeah.
pieces, and I found, and it's funny you mentioned that because I did find an apple tree in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, huh, this would be a really good spot to set up on. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, little things like that, people would be surprised if you can find that little edge like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely get lucky.
Heck yeah. So I mean, with being so dry, have you guys had much, of that EHD and stuff down by you?
We haven't had a lot yet.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of it here and there. Um, I have a couple does and one mature buck on our Nebraska farm that's not looking the healthiest. Um, he's a 5-year-old deer, probably
Mm.
I don't know, right around the 150 mark. But he is super skinny and not looking good. But he's looked that way. Gosh, it's probably the second week of August, and I have
Okay.
had. It seems like, and I don't know if this is you know, correct or not. I'm just telling you what I've witnessed, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
2012 was a horrible EHD year here for us. Like, there's places that had 70 to 80% kill off in certain
Oof.
areas. My farms were hit decently, not that much. But the deer I killed that year, I actually had tested He kind of went MIA late summer on the trail camera, showed back up, looked terrible. Ended up surviving. I killed him November the 8th that year. He was an 8-year-old deer that I had a ton of history with.
Wow.
And I had him tested and he had it and survived. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's different strains. I think there is different strains of it. I don't know if maybe they can get immunity to it. You know, we've had a few different years that we've had it in certain areas, and I do feel like it almost seems like they're maybe getting some immunity to it. I don't know if that's scientific or not, but it just seems like it. Um,
Yeah.
and I do truly feel we do have a pretty good feed program here. We don't hunt over bait. You can in Kansas, you can't in Nebraska, but we do feed year round with a
Hmm.
really good protein feed that I have made here at our local co-op that I came up with them. And I, I've seen a huge difference in my opinion, keeping them healthy. We plant a lot of food plots. It just seems like our deer are always very healthy, and I think that helps. If the deer's already healthy going into getting sick, I mean, it's no different than me and you. If we eat
Right.
good, keep on our vitamin, stuff like that, and we get sick, it maybe not is going to be as bad as somebody that eats donuts all day long, stuff like that. So, um, it just, I'm hoping we don't see it too much. So far, I haven't seen a ton, but we'll see how the year
Good.
goes.
For sure. No, that's a good PSA because I always feel going down the healthy rabbit hole a little bit is like hunting season comes and I'm like I'm pretty solid all summer long, and then I start those early morning gas station
Oh
runs and you're
yeah,
grabbing a
you bet.
breakfast sandwich or two.
You bet. It's
For
pretty hard to get
yeah.
off track right away.
Yeah, exactly. So when do you make that switch, and or maybe you don't, but when do you make that switch from like, I know a lot of people usually hunt just in the afternoon, evenings for early season. When do you start making that switch and hunting mornings?
Usually around the 20th of October. It just really depends too on the farm and stand placements. I feel like a lot of people, are just like, do not hunt early season in the mornings.
Right.
I agree with that to an extent, but I definitely feel like it depends on the situation, the type of terrain you're hunting. Um, if you're hunting somewhere where you're just hunting giant woodlots, what's the difference if you're hunting bedding? If you're trying to hunt more than
Mm-hmm.
close to bedding, obviously they're not probably going to be close to that bedding right away. So, the biggest problem we run into here early season where I'm at is, you've got pockets of timber here and there and then giant agricultural fields. So getting to certain stands this time of year where there's, several deer in those fields that you have to go through to get to where you want to go, definitely can be difficult. Whereas during the rut you can get away with a little more, and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that where they're just running around crazy. But I've got some areas. I've got a couple stands I've honestly thought about going, and I just haven't. Getting the kids to school in the mornings and stuff, and just the way it just hasn't worked out yet. But I've got a
Yep.
couple stands that I can kind of come in the back door to certain areas that I definitely could get into in the mornings if I had the right wind. I think it just so much of hunting, I feel like, is situational. The
Mm-hmm.
area you're hunting, the type of terrain you're hunting, things like that. There's just not one thing that can fit everybody across the country for sure. So I think you just gotta kind of assess the situation. What terrain you're hunting and the area you're hunting, and go from there and make a good decision.
Absolutely. So if you had to sum up as best you can, what would Cody Butler's magical formula be for deciding to pick a spot, if it's a combination of weather, what trail cameras are showing you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think going off cameras helps. I
Mm-hmm.
think once you get further into the season, I think cameras definitely help early in the year. Just trying to get a deer on a pattern. When things start getting a little closer to the rut, obviously that can change. They're going to maybe tell you he's in the area, but then at that
Yep.
time, you've just kind of got to use your woodsmanship and go off of that, and find maybe specific funnels, areas that you know narrow down to where deer are going to go through. And one thing that I've really went off of is just history with the deer. I mean, we don't usually try to start targeting anything until it's 5 or 6 years old. around here.
Mm-hmm.
So by then, I've usually got a pretty decent idea of how that deer moves, how he travels, what he's doing. And one thing that I will say I think is extremely overlooked is every deer has a different personality. There is very aggressive deer. There's deer that are extremely passive. Um, I've had really good luck late October killing deer maybe with rattling horns, getting close to where I think he's bedding and making him mad. And come out basically that type of stuff, just making him think another buck's invading his home range.
Right.
I think that can be really a good thing, but you've got to know if that deer is aggressive by going off of past history. Some
Mm-hmm.
deer that I've hunted in the past, and I think one of the most difficult deer to kill is the passive type bucks that maybe don't like to be around other deer. They don't like to fight as much. They're just, for example, that deer that my buddy Will from Hunt Stand killed last year. He got 7.5 years old, and I think I saw that deer once or twice ever, and my neighbors only saw him maybe 2 or 3 times
Okay.
in his whole lifetime. He was just really hard to pin down, moved a lot at night. He was never with any other bucks, it seemed like, on the trail cameras. He was just a super loner deer. Would
Mm-hmm.
always shed his velvet the last. He would be one of the last deer to shed his velvet. Will actually killed him in velvet, like clear into the 12th or something like that of
Wow.
September, which is just very rare around here. And
Yeah.
he came in with a bunch of does. I mean, he was a big, muscular. I mean, gosh, he was probably pushing 300 pounds in September when he shot him. I
Jeez.
mean, just a giant. Will's from Texas. He walks up to the deer. He's like, "My gosh, look at the size of this!" Like he just couldn't
What did
believe how
he
big
eat?
it was. But
Yeah.
I just really think learning the deer himself, how he moves and his personality and stuff, and sometimes you got to be aggressive on him, and sometimes you've got to be, a little more passive. I think time of year really is a thing you need to look at too, as far as when you want to get aggressive. When you get closer to the rut, you can obviously get away with a little bit more. I used to be a very passive hunter. I feel like since probably I hunted a deer in 2017 that really taught me a lot, and I finally killed him just getting more aggressive with him. Um,
Okay.
and since then, I feel like I've killed most of the deer I would say I kill in the very first or second time in, because I just really try to learn him specifically, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
only hunt him on a day that I think I can kill him, and that usually is maybe weather. I'm a big, big, big believer in the red moon. I bet
Okay.
I've killed seriously 90% of the bucks that I've killed in the last 6 or 7 years on red moon days. Uh,
Interesting.
I I'm not saying it's a foolproof thing, but I just going off of trail cameras and really kind of studying when I'm getting daylight pictures of deer, and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. It just seems like, at least in my area, there's something to that.
Okay.
So yeah.
I like it. How do you operate your, trail camera database as far as pictures go? Are you running some sort of software of your own, or you got a big old Excel
I
sheet?
don't really run anything off any programs or anything. I'm kind of old school. I just either write stuff down
Mm-hmm.
or put it in the computer myself.
Yep.
And with cell cameras and stuff on your phone, you can even go back in time, and look at stuff if you need to, and things like that. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Like it. So just kind of moving on, as we've talked about lots of different of bucks you've killed, but I really wanted to focus in. I was rewatching your video on the triple drop buck with the recurve.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that. I want to kind of give us the backstory on that buck, and just the history with him, and then up until that moment.
So that was a deer that I didn't know I had any history with at all
Really?
until I killed him. The reason
Jeez.
was because he changed so much because of an injury. So
Hmm.
2 years prior, so I killed him in 2023. So 2021, he would have just been probably a mid 40s. just solid, nice 10-pointer. And
Mm-hmm.
then 2022, we had a deer on that farm that we just really didn't pay attention to. Just a giant bodied, huge horse of a deer. But he busted basically his entire rack off. Like, and one side actually grew really weird. And he just had like these basically like little clubs on his head. And so, I mean, we saw him sometimes and we didn't, my dad actually had an encounter with him in a ground blind. Um, like the first week in November that year at like 6 yards or something like that, like crazy
Oh,
deer.
wow.
Um, and I remember him texting me and be like, geez, that old, just junky deer is in here. Well, little did we know it was that deer before, but he had gotten an injury. So going into the season, 2023 season, I started getting pictures of this deer that had triple drop tines on the left side and just a normal
Jeez.
5x5 side, excuse me, on the other side he had a little kicker point on his base on that side too, on the 5x5 side. But
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, geez, like why? I'm thinking to myself, like, I wonder if he has an injury, or something like that, just because one side grew so goofy. And even on the triple drop side, he had a big inside point on that side. So just an unreal deer. But I had last year going into the season was probably one of my best years. I think I had 21 or 22 mature bucks to hunt going into the year. And
Gosh.
one of my number one was actually a deer I had several years of history with. My neighbor actually ended up killing him. He actually ended up going 191 or something like that. Had a
Wow.
13-inch drop tine on the one side and some sticker points and just an unbelievable deer. But I hunted him early. He kind of vanished. Didn't know he got killed by the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But then I transferred over to hunting this triple drop deer. And I had a couple different cameras around the pond. It was a dry year last year. I was getting him at the pond. I was getting him coming to a scrape as well through there. Kind of just started watching the weather, and we ended up getting I can't remember exactly what day I killed him on, but it was around this time, maybe like 1 week later, around the 20th, I
Okay.
think, or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
he started getting pretty regular coming into that pond and working this scrape line, and he was always coming from the same direction. So I started looking at the map. And just going off what a couple deer had done in the past, there was kind of just this little small pocket of CRP in the back corner. I had a feeling he was maybe coming out of there, going through the cornfield and coming in there. And then there was another spot, just kind of a pocket of CRP and cedars at the end of this draw that I thought he could be in too. So I got my stands hung for 2 different winds. And I am a big, 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 big believer of hunting a fringe wind, which to me means basically you're giving the deer the advantage of the wind, which sounds kind of scary, but you're basically hunting him walking into the wind. If there's one thing that I've noticed over the years, I feel like mature deer just love to walk with their nose into the wind. They just feel safe that way. They can smell everything where they're going. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
basically set your stand off to where that wind's just barely going by him, or something like that, to where he feels comfortable coming in, but yet he's not going to get you just because you're just enough off. That seems to be. I've killed a ton of really good bucks over the last few years doing that, and so I had a couple sets where I knew he was bedding to where I could do that hunting with a fringe wind. Got the right wind the first time I went in. He actually got me. He winded me, not terribly. There was a bunch of cedars there. He didn't really know. He just knew something was up. Kind of bounded off, stood there for a little bit, and just kind of walked off. He wasn't, terribly spooked. I didn't blow him out of the world or nothing. So I mean, doing that, you can. It's not a it's high risk, high reward. Um,
Yep.
but what he ended up doing is he was bedded just slightly off where I thought he was. And instead of coming around to work the scrapes on my left, he was going to come around to my right and come into the back side of the pond. So he did what I wanted him to. He just didn't come to the scrapes. He was going to come to the pond first. Um, so I waited. That was the first cold front in October, probably sometime the second week of October. I waited about a week. We had another really big cold front come in. I think it dropped down into I think when I got in the stand that night, it was upper 40s or
Oh,
low
wow.
50s. Like it dropped a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in there again. I had gotten a picture of him 2 days prior, coming through the pond and working the scrapes again and then heading back to where I thought he was. So I got in there again, and this time the wind had a little more west in it, so I knew I was going to have even a little more play room. and sat there. A lot of deer movement that night. A lot of deer coming to the pond. A couple of young bucks. A lot of does and fawns. And I just I'd been getting a lot of pictures recently of bucks starting to get a little aggressive, so I took the rattling horns with me for the first time, and I just kind of tickled them together. Nothing crazy aggressive. Just try to make it sound like a couple young bucks in around that pond. Just some active deer, in there.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 minutes after I put the horns down, I turn around and he's coming out of the corn just looking to see, what's going on. He kind of stood up on a hill and he could look down in there and just see what was going on. Went in his face, comes down. You could tell he was not upset, but you could tell his demeanor was definitely like, who's in here, type of thing. Comes down, tears a scrape up. I unfortunately didn't get that on film because there's a cedar tree in the way.
Okay.
I'm in the stand, but he comes down and you can hear me in the audio in there. And I say he's working a scrape, but I can't film him where he's at. But he just starts tearing that up, and then a little buck kind of met up with him. They messed around over there for a minute, and then a little buck starts coming to the pond. He just starts doing that slow, big, mature buck walk to the pond. And we used to run cattle in that farm years ago, and there's an old fence post that I had ranged at 23 yards in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes down, he was going to stop about right there, and I was hoping that he was going to stop on his own because I didn't want to shoot more than about 25 yards my recurve, and so he was right at the end, and I didn't want to have to stop him and put him on alert. And man, the good Lord just stopped him perfect for me. I didn't have to say a word, and drew back, let the arrow fly, and watched it disappear in his heart. And
Mm-hmm.
he went about 40 yards and piled up.
Crazy.
So
Anyone listening has to go and watch that video because, like I said, I was watching it again last night, and it was just like it's an awesome video. And I think, just going off of that, what are some of the like key lessons, like just off of that hunt that you took away that would benefit another guy out hunting?
you're starting to break up just a little bit there.
Oh, we good now?
Yep, I think I got you now.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
yep.
No, I was just kind of going off of, with that hunt. What are just some like key lessons? Like you said, you didn't have a ton of history with this buck. You got him a little bit beforehand. What
Okay,
would
yeah.
just some of
So
those?
before I guess I get into that, I got into the story, but I didn't tell you then. So what ended up happening is after I killed the deer, we noticed so his testicles were injured, whether he caught them on a fence or what happened. But I'm not kidding you when I say they were both the size of softballs. Like,
Oh, poor guy.
yeah, like gigantic. So that's what
Jeez.
ended up making him grow. And then we noticed going back in the trail camera pictures, he had a scar, and he was that deer from the year before that just had the clubs on his head. So we're assuming
Mm-hmm.
he got injured that year. That's why his rack was extremely weak and just was all busted up, didn't grow right. Um,
Yep.
and two, the deer was extremely red. His body, like his hair, was just a really red colored deer. So we ended up figuring out that it was that deer. So that was the deal. So whatever had happened to him, we don't really know. But
Yep.
that's what we think then probably caused his right side to grow, so goofy that year too. But as far as your
Crazy.
question,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and obviously not everybody can do this, but know when to get aggressive. I think, 10 years ago, I was just trying to be in the woods as much as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
I think now I spend way, way, way less time hunting and more time trying to figure out what deer I'm going after. And then, going off weather, going off time of the year and stuff like that, and knowing when to move in and get aggressive. Like I said, I hunted that deer 2 times and killed him. Sitting in here looking at some of these deer, I mean, truly, and I'm not saying I didn't hunt that deer more than once, but I definitely feel like I kill almost every deer that I kill the first or second time into that specific stand. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to burn out stands. I like to hunt them just to where I know I've got a very high chance of either having an encounter or getting him down.
Sure.
So kind
So
of just
do you?
make a
Do,
strategy, I guess, and know
yeah.
when to get aggressive and move in. Don't just go
Yeah.
hunt him because you got a picture of him,
Right.
close to daylight. I know a lot of times maybe you get a picture of him right close to, you're like, oh, he might daylight tomorrow. I'm going to go hunt him, but if you would just look at the weather, maybe 3, 4 days from now, you're going to get that perfect wind and the temperature is going to drop 15 degrees. That's the day to move in.
Okay. Love that. So going off of that, um, are you, so, you talked about, burning tree stands out. Are you, do you have some permanent spots always, or do you usually kind of just hang and bang as you see fit?
I try to, I've done both. So I
Mm-hmm.
tried for like 2 years. I basically pretty much completely mobile hunted. I just moved
Yep.
around and was very successful doing that. But with us owning most of our farms now, having kids now, um,
Mm-hmm.
to where sometimes I just gotta bust butt out the door and go get in a tree.
Right.
Most of the farms that I have now, I still keep a mobile setup just in case I need to make a move. But most of the properties we hunt now are just completely set up to where I can just go jump in. And I've got like some small, well, like our smallest farm, a little 40 we have in Kansas. I mean, I've got two, three, I got 6 stands on just that little 40 acres for every possible situation.
Sure.
So in it, not everybody's going to be able to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing I found out, most of the farms we hunt are small too. They're 40s, 60s, 80s, 160s. One thing I did run into a little bit with the mobile hunting on some small farms is it was a little tough to get in and out sometimes without bumping deer,
Yep.
especially if I was trying to get aggressive and get close to a bed or something like that. But
Just making too much noise, or?
yeah, well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just that, and how our properties lay and different things. A lot of times deer can bed and see you coming from a long ways, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
you've
Absolutely.
just gotta really just be careful, I guess. Um,
For sure.
and like I said, with kids and stuff, it's hard to do it as easy as I used to. I can't
Yeah.
I can't get up at 4 a.m. and go hang a stand in the dark quite as easy as I used to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're getting old.
Yeah.
So, the video itself, like I said before, is it's an awesome video. But one of my favorite parts of that video is like, as soon as heart shot him, you watch him, like in the video, you could see, you go down, he goes down. Like,
Hmm.
one of the first things you say is just, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord. And then you call your wife and say,
Yep.
I got him.
Yep.
So just kind of going with that. So where does, I know, like on your YouTube page too, it's faith, family, hunting. What, how do those three things intermix with you being a very, big time, doing a lot of hunting? How do you find the balance for all three of those things, especially come fall time?
Yeah. So it's funny that we're doing this podcast right now too, because I feel like in the last week there's been a lot of really cool things. I feel like the good Lord's given me
Mm-hmm.
a lot of peace and a lot of vision that I might have lost. But I've either been filming hunts or doing creative content and marketing for hunting companies since I was 18, and
Wow.
I'm 33 now. So been able to travel the country, film for a lot of different TV shows even, and just do a lot of marketing content for a lot of awesome companies. And I feel like, but originally the whole reason I got into wanting to film my own hunts was because I wanted to share my experiences, but try to use my experiences in the woods and those stories to spread the gospel.
Mm.
So that was really what I wanted to do, and did that for a lot of years, and then kind of more got into doing creative content and marketing for hunting companies through my business, Cottonwood Creative. And I'd never got away completely from my Christian faith, but I kind of got
Right.
away from the whole reason that I got into, filming my own videos, I guess, for a while. And, I've recently, like I said, the main company I work for right now is Henry Repeating Arms. They've been amazing, but recently I've had some other job opportunities come up, kind of been going back and forth on what I should do and different things. And actually just yesterday, I just felt like God had given me a vision to stay at Henry. They're a fantastic company that has a lot of great people behind it. American made, and God and country is what they stand for.
Love it.
Wanted to stay with that, and I also was able to, work with them on even kind of getting a promotion in a way with them that is going to allow me to potentially do more filming on my own and maybe kind of revamp and resurrect my own videos a little bit. So I'm really looking forward to that because there's just so many cool stories that I've had and so many almost supernatural experiences that I've had with some of these hunts. The triple drop deer, for example, I don't know if I've told the triple drop story a few different times on different podcasts so far,
Mm-hmm.
which has been awesome. But the crazy thing that I will say about that hunt, for one, there's just a lot of things going through my mind that day. And I felt that night God had really given me peace on a lot of things. But right where I killed that deer, basically straight across the road, we have a neighbor right there. And I won't get into his backstory or his name too much, but
Yep.
he was in a pretty bad place where he came from for a while, and he actually moved out here to get away from it. He's never told me his full story, but kind of found the Lord in a way, and got away from a not so great life. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, he kind of watches that property for me because it's the one that's furthest away from where I live. It's about 35 minutes from where we live, and we're always back and forth. If he sees anything weird over there, he always lets me know. And or if he sees a big buck from the road or something from the yard, he always lets
Yeah.
me know. And which is nice. But anyway, I'm not sure the exact what he has, but he has some health issues now, and he actually has seizures sometimes. And while I was in the stand that night, it was pretty cloudy all evening, and right before that deer came out, the sun had kind of crested, and it was just the most unbelievable sunset with the clouds burning off. Like it just
Mm-hmm.
looked insane. Like the colors were just unreal. And then obviously he ends up coming in, and I killed him. But I texted him after I got done talking to my wife and my dad, and come to find out that he had had a seizure that night and on his porch outside, and he woke up and looked over and saw that sunset, and he said that something told him that I had killed that deer.
Oh.
So just a crazy, I mean, it's stories like that obviously they don't always happen. Not everything is going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But just geez, it's almost emotional for me to think about now. But when he texted me that, man, I just sat down like, geez, like that's pretty crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
um I feel like God's out there all the time, if we just look for him. And I feel like sometimes we overlook things like that as, oh, it's just a coincidence. That's a pretty big thing. That's a pretty big event for him to obviously have a seizure and then have a feeling like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's so many. I feel like God is really in so many of the small things that we don't necessarily always see. And if we would just maybe sit there and be still and look, we would find him in those small things as well. So those are the stories that I really want to tell, and I hope moving forward from here, maybe kind of resurrecting some of my own videos, like I said, and starting to
Mm-hmm.
do that again, that I can tell, and hopefully ultimately bring more people to the kingdom.
That's what it's all about, man. No, that is such an absolutely beautiful story. And it just, and you talking about, appreciating the little things is such a key thing for people to hear. I think, especially nowadays with such a fast paced world, there's so much going on outside of our own little, house, but there's those little moments in time, like whether, like with my kids, it's, just out, walking out to the deer blind, and
Mm-hmm.
my oldest just, you just kind of like, you don't think about it when you're, walking out with a buddy or by yourself, and you're just kind of walking out there. But then you take those little moments. It's like, yeah, you're just walking out to a hunting blind, but you all of a sudden you take a step back from, life, right, a little bit, and
Yeah.
say, and just realize, like, I'm out here with my child. I'm out here in God's country, being able to do this with him. I've, because life weighs you down, man. There's a lot
Oh, it
that goes
does.
on for everybody. And, you got those, you got to like be able, like you said, take those little moments in time where you're like, hey, everything's going to be all right. God's got my back. If he's got my
Yeah.
back, I'm going to be just fine.
I've always
But
really liked the saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I feel like
amen. Yeah.
that is true. That not to do with hunting, but I was just thinking this the other night. So our 2-year-old, he has he's funny as all get out and has no fear of anything.
It's those second childs, man.
Oh my goodness. Like,
Ours is the
he will
same.
jump off the roof and not even think twice about it. He's that kid. But
Yep.
he's also
Yep.
like the sweetest, kind-hearted, loving little kid ever. But anyway, he's been getting all 4 of his back molars like at the same time. And so he's
Oh, poor
been
guy.
just a nightmare sleeping
Yep.
recently. And I feel like sometimes we're quick to get angry, in moments like that, like, "Oh, I'm so tired, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there, I'd gotten up and in the middle of the night with him, and I was sitting there rocking him. I'm thinking, like, kind of talking to God, and I'm like, come on, Lord, like, why do we have to do this? Like, I gotta, do stuff tomorrow. I'm tired, blah, blah. And I was sitting there, and I just kind of felt, God tell me, like, he's only this little for so long. And
Mm.
pretty soon, he's not going to want mommy and daddy to rock him anymore. He's not going to, want that. And, even though it's tough at that time, and this could be, an analogy for so many things, but just
Oh, right.
because life, is really tough in that moment, I feel like even in those really hard times, if you just look, you can see a bright side to it,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's been
It's
years that I've struggled really hard hunting.
yeah.
That we've had years that I have a feeling, honestly, this year could be, a little bit more difficult just because of the drought and, our deer numbers aren't quite what they normally are. I've got several really good mature bucks, but I just feel like, for whatever reason, it's the numbers are down maybe just a little bit, things like that. But it seems like every single time that God's ever, I don't want to say put me through adversity, but maybe allowed things to happen to
Mm-hmm.
help me grow. Um, the story at the end just ends up being that much better. So,
Oh, yeah. It's all part of his plan, and sometimes it's not a plan that we want to accept, right? Like,
yeah,
you're like, why is X, Y, and Z happening? Why is why did truck break down? Why did this, and all of a sudden it's like, it's like you said, it's not necessarily that he's putting adversity maybe right in front of you, but it's those little things that you get to see if you take the time, and you take time to pray, and you take time to reflect, that there's a method behind, not necessarily, probably not madness, but you know what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
that the saying is, there's a method behind the madness. Like, your kid's up screaming, you got to get up early and go on a hunting trip. You got to get up early, go to work, and your
hmm,
kid's up in the middle of the night just screaming. You're like, I just need 2 hours of sleep. That's it. But
yeah,
you know, it's those beautiful times where you're like, God, this, he's only going to be this young for so long. And it's just,
yeah,
it's beautiful, man. It
yeah,
really is.
for sure,
Yeah.
definitely.
So what do you got cooking for the fall? What's up next for you?
For me, I will probably, we've got some really nasty weather the next, I think it was like 3 or 4 days here. We got some really high winds and warmer conditions. We had a cold
Mm-hmm.
front move in. Not going to share a ton about this, but I do have the biggest whitetail I've ever had this year on camera.
Well, good luck, brother.
Like, I don't want to say any numbers, but
Yep.
we'll just
Yep.
say he's, I
He's
think,
on the target list.
over the 2 mark. We'll say that for sure. He's doesn't even seem real. But he's not living on me a ton yet. He has in the past. He
Hmm.
will be on me eventually. So I have not hunted Kansas yet myself. I went out a couple times with my dad. I took my wife
Hmm.
once, but I have pretty much put all my eggs in the basket of that deer, and I will burn my tag if I need to,
Hmm.
going after him. So I've kind of just been hunting Nebraska. I don't have a ton of deer in Nebraska right now. I've got 3 bucks that I want to go after. One being just a absolute, truly, he could be like 330, 350 weight wise. He's just giant. I
Chase.
mean, I'll have to send you a picture of him or something. But I've been hunting him,
Yeah.
and then that 5-year-old buck that I said sick, I would also take him as well. I've been hunting.
Hmm.
I don't know how in the world I haven't killed him yet because he is all over. He's all over the trail cameras, and I don't know if he's bedding so close to my food plot where I'm getting pictures of him that he's watching me get in, possibly because he's sick. That's the only thing I can
Sure.
come to because he's there every single day, other than the 2 times I've hunted. But I did
Gotcha.
have an encounter with the really giant. I call him the Canadian deer because he's just so stinking huge. Um, but I did have
Migrated
an
down.
encounter. Yeah, I did have an encounter with him 3 or 4 nights ago. We had a really big cold front move in here, and it
Hmm.
was fantastic. Felt awesome. Finally felt like fall because, geez, we've had like upper 80s and 90s here. It's been miserable all early season. I've barely hunted at all. But
Yep.
I did get an encounter with him. He came out at like 300 yards or so, and was just out in the cornfield, and he was kind of heading my way. It would have been real borderline on shooting light by the time he got to me, and I ended up having a pair of coyotes come through and kind of cleared the field, and just was what it was. It probably was a blessing because I had so many deer in the field that they cleared it, and I was able to get out without having to bump anything or
Yep.
stuff like that. So it's probably a blessing, in disguise. But been hunting him a little bit on certain days. I think I can catch up to him eventually, but we'll see.
Yeah. Good luck, man. That sounds like some exciting couple weeks coming up here for you.
Yeah, we'll see. I think what is today? 17. Yeah, so we're getting about to my favorite time here. So hopefully
Yeah.
the next from about now until the first 3 or 4 days of November here is going to be where I'm going to really hit it hard and try to move in a couple of these specific deer. So we'll see what happens, and if not, we'll just we'll let the does bring them to me, I guess, in the rut, hopefully. And late season's another time I really like. If you've got the food, if your target buck or mature deer on your farm, whatever, make it through the
Hmm.
main part of the season, and you've got the food in the winter, I truly believe I don't think there's any better time to kill an absolute giant than late season if you have the food. So we'll see
For
what
sure.
happens. Might be a good
Do you
year.
guys get much of a second rut down there? Kind of that mid
We
December time frame.
we do sometimes. I think it kind
Hmm.
of varies year to year. The biggest deer I ever killed, actually, I shot in. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Probably somewhere around the 10th of December, and he came out
Okay.
onto a food plot with a doe. So,
Gotcha.
we definitely see it sometimes. Not always, but a lot of times it seems like sometimes we'll have a rut here, like starting around that 5th to 7th of November, and they'll
Hmm.
run crazy hard for, a week and a half there or so. There'll be kind of a lockdown period there, and it seems like a lot of times like that lasts like the 21st, 2nd of November through like the first couple days of December. We'll have another big push where a lot of those mature bucks have bred a lot of does. There's a lot more does, coming out of estrus, and it just seems like they're really in a searching period at that time trying to find those last does. I've killed a lot of really good bucks during that time as well.
Love it. Sweet, man. Well, before we let you go, I want to be cognizant of your time here, but
Yeah.
we've been doing our quick fire question segment, so I'm just gonna
Okay.
fire off some questions for you and see what we come up with. So early, we're both got young kids. Early morning, we're tired. What's your go-to gas station snack and drink?
Probably Casey's breakfast pizza
Love it.
and some sort of a coffee drink.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on
Are
if I
you
got
like hot,
sometimes
cold?
yeah. Just depends on what I'm feeling that day. I kind of like them both. If it's a real cold morning, probably a warm one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, outside of obviously your bow, rangefinder, binos, that kind of, the main stuff for equipment wise, what's that one piece of equipment that you would say is probably the most underrated that a lot of people look past?
Functional and quiet clothing.
Mm. What are you rolling right now?
Um, I've I'm toying with a few different things, but mostly Code of Silence apparel.
Okay.
I really like their stuff a lot. Muddy just recently released some stuff
I
as
saw that.
well. Um, they're in with Hunt Stand. They're all GSM owned companies. So
Mm-hmm.
I've toyed around with that. I really like their base layers and stuff. Their soft shell's pretty decent as well, but man, there's something about that Code of Silence stuff that I mean, going off the name, I mean, Code of it's just so quiet. It's so
Yeah.
soft, and hunting. Dedicating myself the whole entire season last year to a recurve. That's all close range stuff, and I really wanted to make sure that no garment was going to screw up me drawing
Mm-hmm.
back, or anything like that, and got into that. And I actually was filming with Bill Winky a little bit last year too.
Really?
Yeah, I've known Bill for quite a while, going back to the Midwest whitetail days.
Nice.
And I just shared some footage with him last year. So the triple drop hunts on his channel as well. Um,
Sweet.
but yeah, I think that and it is something that's really overlooked. And I went with Code of Silence just because Ev, that owns the company, he's a Nebraska guy here too. He was
Nice.
actually the guy that
Yep.
used to create he was the head clothing creator at Cabela's for years and years and
Oh,
years. And
wow.
then when Cabela's got bought out by Bass Pro and all that
Mm-hmm.
jazz happened, obviously he got out of it. And then can't remember how many years ago he started Code of Silence. It's still pretty new. Maybe 3-4 years back
Mm-hmm.
he started it, but it's some really
Nice.
good stuff.
Sweet. All right. So are you a Spotify or a Pandora guy?
Mostly Pandora for music, I would say.
Okay.
Just because I
What's
found it
what's your go-to radio station
go-to radio station, probably
for Pandora?
oh, depends on my mood, but definitely either country stuff or man, I've been really into some of the Christian music right now.
Okay.
Just there's a lot of really good stuff out there anymore. I feel like a lot of the gospel type music I feel like used to be more traditional, not so good. I feel like there's a
Yeah.
lot of good. You got to be careful with some of it, but I feel like there's a
Yep.
lot more modern stuff out there right now. It's got a really good message and a lot of really good artists out there right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I my go-to is always I love some Zach Williams. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And sometimes my
but
wife she is a music nut. She could tell
yeah,
you every song and who wrote it and probably the year. I mean, and she loves old stuff. So there's times I get into an old vibe too for a while.
sure.
I like some of the old Tom Petty music and stuff like that. So
Love it, man. Awesome. Last one. What's Cody's bucket list hunt?
my bucket list hunt. I'm gonna be really specific on this.
Love it.
But so here in Nebraska, we have some of the biggest. Nobody knows about this because it's resident only, but we have
Okay.
some of the biggest elk in the country in western Nebraska that people don't really
Mm-hmm.
talk about. Obviously, like I said, but it's a once in a lifetime tag.
Yep.
So once you draw, you can never go again. I've been fortunate enough now to film 5 different bulls, I think.
Okay. I was just gonna
Out
ask because
there.
I thought I saw something on your page with that.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to film 5 different bulls for different people
Mm-hmm.
out there over the years. And I actually finally, after I think 6 or 7 years, I drew a cow tag last year and I went out and shot one with a 45-70 Henry. Shot a
Nice.
cow out there. So that was kind of fun. But I've been putting in for 9 or 10 years now. for a bull tag, haven't got one. I know people have put in for 25 plus years and haven't got one. So I mean, and there's
Jeez.
no real point method with it. It's just luck of the draw. But
Sure.
that is my dream hunt because they're very unpressured out there because
Okay.
not a lot of hunters. And I have been so spoiled being able to go out there and do that. It is unreal. They're so aggressive and they come in just screaming like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So that is definitely my dream hunt is to draw that tag and go out there. Would love to go elk hunting. But I would say just, that's pretty specific, but I would say honestly, my just normal, if I could just go out and do it, I really want I want to kill a really big mule deer spot and stock with my bow. Just really want to do that bad. So that's definitely on the list.
Sweet. Love it, man.
I got to get off the whitetails to go do it though. I gotta take time to do it, I guess. I went out a couple times. I actually almost killed an absolute, I won't get into it, but probably, I was told by the guy I was with, it probably would have been top 3 in the state with a bow muley.
Oh,
I got 37 yards, and he literally went the only possible way that he could go when he got up that I couldn't kill him. So it was just that he was. They thought he'd probably go in the low 190s to mid low 190s net typical. So
jeez,
he was huge. But before we go here, I guess I got him over here. I'll show you.
Let's see him.
Triple drop, but I've got him. Got him on
what a stud
right here. That's his triple drop side. You can see all his trash and and so that's him. I just got this actually yesterday. This was my Nebraska deer last year.
I saw that. That is such a cool mount when people do that.
Yeah,
I think that's super awesome.
This is kind of my biggest ones are in the living room downstairs, but this is some of my Wall of Fame ones here. These are all booners on this side here. This was my first booner. He's 173. This deer's right at 170. This is my biggest archery deer here. That's the deer I told you taught me a lot back in 2017. He's 185. Deer I called long. Gosh. And this is the deer that I told you had EHD that I killed back in 2012. 8.5-year-old deer. He was kind of the
wow.
That was talking about videos and stuff. That was kind of the series that put me on a map and got me a lot of jobs. We did a project with a couple buddies that year called the November Project, and it was basically kind of a documentary of me and 3 of my buddies through the whole month of November hunting the rut. So it's kind of a cool deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man. Well, sweet. Like I said, I don't want to take up, I know you're a super busy guy. So I just want to, before we end here, just thank you, man, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Wish you the best of luck. I know you got some studs that are running around your neck of the woods. So
I'll try to keep you updated. If I get one down, maybe we can do another one.
Sounds like a plan, man. Sweet. Right. Thank you for joining us on this journey through faith in the great outdoors. We hope today's episode has inspired you to seek God's presence in the wilderness and deepen your connection with nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Wild Faith Podcast on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll continue to be a part of the Wild Faith Podcast community. We'd also love to hear from our listeners, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can connect with us on social media or through our website. Your feedback is important to us and helps us improve and tailor our content to better serve you. And always remember, the great outdoors isn't just a playground for hunting and fishing. It's a sanctuary for finding solace and spiritual renewal. As you gear up for that next adventure, I pray you find God's presence in the crackling of a campfire, the thrill of reeling in your catch, or the quiet solitude found in nature. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Wild Faith Podcast. Take care, and God bless.